Good morning, everyone. We would like to begin with acknowledging the traditional tribal lands that we reside and where our data has been sampled, which is comprised of the 5 U.S. states and 2 Canadian provinces of our study data. Our faculty coordinators are Dr. Emily Begain and Sajid Akeem, and we are the United Tribes Technical College team comprised of Brett Alberts, Marlon Chase, Corrine Felix Wells, and myself, Jennifer Lemming. We study the methane flux dynamics in the Prairie Pothole wetlands. Methane is the second most abundant greenhouse gas in the atmosphere after carbon dioxide and has a greenhouse warming potential 25 times higher than that of carbon dioxide. So it is an important component in our climate system and deserves attention. This plot illustrates methane concentration over the past century. The Prairie Pothole region is an area comprising of depressions created when glaciers were treated after the last glacial maximum, ending approximately 10,000 years ago. These depressions filled with water to create permanent to semi-permanent wetlands. The PPR is approximately 770,000 kilometers squared that in the United States comprise 5 states: Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, North Dakota, and South Dakota. PPR also has important biodiversity attributes. For example, this region is a significant flyway for migratory birds on the North American continent. Studies on PPR thus have multifaceted advantages. The map has a red boundary indicating the total PPR region in the US states and Canadian provinces, with the blue dots indicating the respective capital cities. Inland wetlands such as the Prairie Pothole region shown in this image are known to be a contributor for atmospheric methane. Globally, wetlands contribute 20 to 40% of global atmospheric methane. Variations of methane transport to the atmosphere from the wetlands in North Dakota are not well understood at present. Hence, we decided to look at the methane flux variations in the PPR region with a focus on North Dakota wetlands over the past decade. The compilation of regional greenhouse gas flux data serves an important contribution toward a better global picture. Further, such results also enable better regional planning, especially of regional ecosystem services at a critical time of global warming related to greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Our project looked at these 2 questions. First, how has methane transport from the PPR wetlands to the atmosphere changed over time and space? Secondly, what are some of the factors impacting methane transport from the PPR wetlands to the atmosphere?
Hello, everyone. My name is Brett Alberts, and I will be presenting the methods section.
And I'm Corrine Felix Wells, and I'll be introducing the results section.
So this flowchart shows the route our team went about in order to answer our 2 proposed research questions. First, we downloaded the data from the USGS through their website. Afterwards, an initial visualization of the sites and parameters were performed, which helped narrow down specific sites and years to be used. Finally, spatial and temporal variation of the selected sites were found, and possible relationships between methane flux and various variables were then looked at. The dataset files we used for our project were downloaded from the USGS website, and the data was gathered over a span of 19 years. The methods over the years are comparable and allow for data to be combined into a single release. Data included parameters for soils, greenhouse gases, topography, water chemistry, weather, and other variables including water depth, soil moisture, and temperature. The first data entry was recorded in 1997 and continued until 2016. Our team utilized 2 different files, greenhousegas.csv and soils.csv. A total of 199 different sites were recorded within the greenhouse gas CSV file, and 587 different sites were recorded within the soils CSV file. Many of which of these had NA or missing values in the earlier years, and the structure of the 2 CSV files included a lot of variables and parameters, but our team mostly focused on the methane flux variable, which was measured in grams per meter squared per hour, and the water depth variable, which is measured in centimeters. Both of these variables were found within the greenhouse gas CSV file. The 6 trace elements our team looked at was found in the soil CSV file, and they were all measured in parts per million. The first research question our team proposed was answered by going through these 2 large data sets. Then we narrowed down and determined which sites had trace element data. Once the narrowed sites were chosen, we looked more closely at the spatial and temporal variation of these specific sites.
Initially, the very first graph we created shows the mean and median of all 199 sites within the greenhouse gas CSV file. We knew we had to figure out which sites had correlation in order to narrow the site selection. And then we started to narrow down the sites by creating 4 different batches within the 199 different sites.
So a significant variation was found after going through the batches, which allowed us to narrow the sites from 199 down to 11. The 11 focused sites allowed for a good observation of soil trace elements, which is a part of our team's second research question. The PPR can be visualized from the outline of the first map, and the second and third map show the locations of our selected sites more closely.
With our site results, we observed the variation between each site. The T9 site had the highest mean methane flux, but the P8 site had the highest median. The sites have large variation that can be better compared using the log scale and the y-axis. There is substantial differences between the mean and median, especially within the T sites. Here we can see the yearly mean methane fluxes for our selected sites, which shows abnormally high levels in 2011. There are multiple factors that could be contributing to the increased flux in 2011, and flooding could have been one of them.
The second research question our team proposed was answered by looking at our 11 selected sites and determining which sites had trace element data correlate with our methane flux data. During our observations, we also looked to see if there were any correlation between methane flux and water depth. As mentioned earlier, the soils CSV file provided the values for 6 different soil trace elements. With these values, we were able to compare the mean and median of different elements and compile a graph showing trace element variability.
This plot introduces the results of the trace element variability within our selected sites. As you see, all the sites show relatively high concentrations of iron in green. Some elements such as cobalt and sulfate sulfur show some variation, while others did not greatly between sites. We then look for any correlation between the elements and the methane flux. We created this heat map to show correlation between the trace elements, methane, and water depth. The closer the number is to 1, the closer the correlation between variables. With that, we did not find any significant correlations between methane flux and any of our selected variables. However, a closer look at water depth was interesting. Water depth versus methane flux shows different patterns for different years, and we look closer at 2011, the year of flooding. Here we have a correlation heat map and a scatter plot of water depth versus methane flux for June, July, and August of 2011. As you can see, the water depth shows a relatively higher correlation in 2011 compared to any other year.
Hello everyone, my name is Marlon Chase. What did we learn from the project? There is large spatial variation of CH4 flux between the PPR wetlands, and we also noticed large variation over time. From the selected trace elements, we learned that all sites show relatively high iron concentrations. We also found our selected variables did not show high correlation with CH4 flux. And also in water depth, particularly 2011, show a relatively higher correlation with CH4 flux. The next steps include further investigation to the relationship of CH4 flux with iron and water depth, further research into specific sites showing high CH4 flux variation, and what are the dynamics of other variables with regards to CH4 flux. We would like to extend our gratitude to several people that helped us out with our project. They provided support and guidance throughout our work. Thank you all for your time, and we would be happy to take any questions on.